Hey guys, welcome back to another classic movie review. Today I want to talk about the 1990 crime thriller called State of Grace, starring Sean Penn, Gary Oldman and Ed Harris. Sean Penn is the lead character. He plays Terry from Boston, specifically recruited by the NYPD to take down one of his old friends called Jackie, played by Gary Oldman, and also Jackie's brother, Frankie, played by Ed Harris. So Sean Penn's character, Terry, is this undercover cop, but that information is not actually revealed until about midway through the movie. You know, at the start of the movie, we're led to believe that Terry is just this regular New Yorker coming back from the Army Corps. That's the alibi that he basically gives to everyone. And upon his return, he went back to an old place he used to drink, and he finds Jackie, played by Gary Oldman. He's this scruffy, long-haired gangster, low-life. Great performance from Gary Oldman once again. The guy always, gives it 10 out of 10. I've never seen Gary Oldman phone it in when it comes to his acting. So, yeah, he was brilliant once again here. About midway through the film, once all this information starts to get revealed about Terry and his actual real-life background, he even makes the point that he didn't actually want to come back to New York. That was the whole point why he left in the first place, to become a cop in Boston. He was aware that all of his friends were involved in criminal acts, and he didn't want to be a part of that, nor, more importantly, he didn't want to end up having to potentially arrest them at some point while he was on duty. So he made the conscious decision a long time ago to leave and completely, start a new life, and not even let his old friends, Frankie and Jackie, know about his whereabouts. So when he does return, they have no idea where he's been, and they just basically believe him from the get-go. So in a weird way, the NYPD have, pulling strings. They looked at the background of Terry, Sean Penn's character, and they said, okay, this guy, he used to live and be friends with, he's connected, or used to be connected innocently to these gangsters that we need to nail. So, why don't we use him? It seems very much so that Terry is kind of cornered in terms of his career. He gets offered this undercover work, but as Terry worms his way in closer and closer to within the Flannery family, his conscience kicks in and he feels really distraught, and he doesn't want to continue. And you have his sergeant, played by John Turturro, kind of coming to him undercover and saying, listen, look, you got to keep it together, you're undercover, just hold on, we're going to crack these guys, just kind of trying to motivate Sean Penn. And so, the cracks are beginning to show, and all that turmoil basically just escalates further and further for the Terry character. It's a really, really good mob movie. It really is. And all around, there are some really strong performances. So I was doing some research, and this movie did come out in 1990, around the same time of the classic movie Goodfellas. And that movie, Goodfellas, being such a huge success, I think definitely pushed this movie kind of out the way. And it's a forgotten gem, absolutely. Strong cast, big production, and overall a really, really decent movie. And I must admit, I had no idea this movie even existed until about 2 or 3 days ago. And I'm a fan of Ed Harris, fan of Sean Penn, big fan of Gary Oldman, and I just had no idea that this movie, even existed. I had no idea that Sean Penn and Gary Oldman were even in a movie together. And State of Grace, never heard the title before. Went online to check out the trailer, and then discovered, oh wait, it's the thriller and it's set in New York. I was like, I'm in, and immediately went to watch it. So it was a nice surprise. I'm a big fan of this genre, big fan of these actors. That's not a perfect movie, but I'm surprised that I've never heard of this before. I've never heard anyone talk about this before. I've never seen a review online of this before. I just was like, whoa, okay, thought I'd watch it and then talk about it here. Gary Oldman is the standout in this movie. His character, Jackie Flannery, is the most memorable and entertaining when it comes to this movie. He's this kind of reckless, low-life gangster that ultimately just wants to do good by his family. And, his family are gangsters, Irish family. They run certain parts of New York, while you've got Ed Harris as the big brother, pretty much running everything. And he's kind of, in a suit, and he's the more sophisticated one with his head on his shoulders. You've got the reckless Gary Oldman type that, clearly is an alcoholic, clearly has anger issues as well. And we see several times in the movie when the character is really pushed and he's trying to stay calm, but he just can't. And Gary Oldman gives this, off the rails performance. It's really, really great. And just thinking about it actually more in depth, I mentioned the alcoholism. I think there are moments where we see Jackie, he uses the alcohol to cope. He uses that as a coping mechanism. There's definitely a vulnerability that Gary Oldman brings to this character. There's moments that the character's crying, that he's sad. And yeah, as much as he is reckless, just thinking about it, there are key moments where subtle key details that Gary Oldman brings to the character where, and some of his actions are kind of like a cry for help, yet nobody around him seems to ever ask him that. Terry has to worm his way into the Flannery family business, collecting information and infiltrating their operations in the hope to basically take them down. As I mentioned, this continues, and as the movie goes on, Sean Penn's character, Terry, really struggles. There's actually not much detail given in terms of the backstory of Terry and how long he has, in terms of his experience going undercover. We obviously know that he was a cop in Boston, but it's never said that he was doing undercover work in Boston. So potentially this could have been his very first time undercover. It's not specifically stated if that's actually true, but given the fact that the Terry character pretty much just capitulates midway through the movie, it's like physically vomiting and starts heavily drinking, you see this struggle and he's just trying to maintain it. Yet in terms of the people that he reports back to, John Turturro and all the other police sergeants, they don't care. They're just like, just stick to the job, just keep going. And ultimately it pushes Terry to quit, and he gives his badge to John Turturro just because things just escalate more and more, and it's this kind of premonition of death that he has where he's just like trying to do the right thing, but no matter what, he kind of ends up getting kind of dragged back in to this chaos. There's a really good intense scene where Ed Harris's character Frankie is having a meeting with another gangster called Borelli. There's a situation going down between these two Irish families, and Frankie is told by Borelli, who's this more dominant, gangster. He basically tells Frankie to kill his own brother, which is Jackie, Gary Oldman. As this meeting is going on, you have Jackie and Terry in another building across the street, and they've all got automatic weapons, and they're just like waiting by, like, here we go, just waiting, and for a signal. Time goes on, and Frankie wants to make a phone call, and Borelli's like, hey, don't insult me, let's talk this out, you're gonna confirm you're gonna kill your brother, he wants an answer. This is an intense scene, and it's nicely paced, and it builds over the course of minutes. Ultimately, after Jackie has this meltdown and he's waving his gun and saying, we gotta go, they rush down and they head to the restaurant, and they're about to kill Borelli. Well, Gary Oldman's character Jackie, he's got the assault rifle ready, and he's about to pull the trigger, but at the last minute Terry stops the killing from happening, and it was a false alarm. But an intense scene, and yeah, just very well edited as well. So in terms of dislikes, the overall main dislike I have for this movie is the score. For me, at times, it was just really over dramatic. There's a scene specifically where Sean Penn, towards the end of the movie, is sitting on the bed of his apartment and he's actually crying, and he's just, once again, he's struggling, he's having a hard time coping and having to maintain this false identity. You've got Sean Penn emoting, he's given this kind of monologue. It's great acting from Sean Penn, and it's still, a decent scene. But for me, what lets it down, even though it is subtle, is the over-dramatic music in the background. It wasn't too overpowering, but still, it just took me out of it. And I was thinking the whole time when Sean Penn was, the camera was panning in closer to his face. Sean Penn's just giving this raw performance, tears coming down his face. And I just couldn't get into it. I just couldn't, because I was just taken out from this music in the background. It's what is this? And I was thinking, if only they just cut out all the music and it was just the dialogue, it would have been so much better. It would have been so much more impactful. And that's the thing about editing. It's, there are some great editors out there. I don't think editors get enough credit. When editors do something wrong, man, for me anyway, it really sticks out like a sore thumb. And the score wasn't necessarily bad. It was well produced. But I think more specifically the placing of the music and the overuse of the score throughout. There was very little scenes I remember where it was just open dialogue. There's just other ways, much better ways. I think the reason I don't like it is because it for me, feels like you're treating your audience like idiots. It's like someone says something like, oh, we've just got a warning, we've got, something's happening, and then the music creeps in, it's like, duh, 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 indicating to the audience, oh, we should be worried. We get it as an issue, that we don't need constant reminders from the score to tell us, feel this, feel that, So the score overall was a big letdown for me, even though it is well produced, and at times it sounds okay, I'm not going to deny that. The only time really this cinematic score works for the movie is actually the end credits, where it kicks in, the camera zooms in on Sean Penn's face, and then we fade to black, and the credits roll, and the song is, that suits it. It's like this kind of poetic ending, which works. Prior to that, throughout the movie, I think it was too sweeping, if that makes sense, if that's a good word to use. It just seemed very overdramatic, and I would love to have had a more grittier score. Also, I want to talk about the ambiguous ending. Even though it is strongly suggested that Terry, or the Terry character, died from his gunshot wounds, I think it would have been more impactful, especially with as I mentioned, the dramatic score kicking in, to have had the camera pan in on Terry's face and have him close his eyes and die, and then the camera fade to black, and then we have the credits with the sweeping score. I think that would have been much better. What we actually got was Terry just looking in the far distance. As I said, it's ambiguous. He's been shot several times throughout this final shootout, and he wasn't wearing a vest, he wasn't on duty, so it's not like he had backup coming. So reasonable to think that Terry actually probably died in this shootout at the end. But I wish the filmmakers had just been more confident, just go with the ending of Sean Penn, his character's dead, Terry, he went out in a blaze of glory, and have everything as it is, everything's perfect, but do the close-up of Terry and have him fade away, and then you end the movie. It would have just worked for me way, way better. And I might as well talk about the ending in general. So yeah, there is a massive shootout at the end. While this was a great shootout and it was filmed very well, for me it just felt a bit too long with the slow motion. The scene was cutting back and forth between the gunshots and this St. Paddy's Day parade going on. I can see what the filmmakers were going for, this very cinematic, dramatic ending to this film. But I don't know, just with the whole film leading up to this big shootout at the end, it almost seemed like a different movie. It was really great, it was shot very well, I liked it, don't get me wrong. Gotta love the blood squibs, but it just seemed very bombastic, and this movie would have been served better if it had been maybe just a one-on-one shootout, maybe between Sean Penn and Ed Harris, rather than Sean Penn, with his gun, killing multiple henchmen before he ends up killing Ed Harris's character, Frankie. I think, I don't know, the way I could sum it up was that the vibe was off for me a little bit when it come to that ending. I think a quieter end to this, rather than a big, loud, brash shootout, it just didn't work for me. Another scene that didn't actually work for me was a scene towards the beginning of the film with Terry and Jackie, and they basically set fire to a abandoned building. Jackie decides to use his cigarette to light up the place while they're still inside the building, and then we see Jackie and Terry make a run for it, and they're running through the fire, and the fire's going everywhere. And credit to the filmmakers, and the visuals are stunning. Clearly it's Sean Penn and Gary Oldman actually running through with all the fire going off in the background. But once again, it just seemed really overly dramatic. It's like, okay, this story doesn't need this. Like, you could kind of do it, but I think, I don't know, almost like maybe the production was too high for the story. Okay, so for the third act, we need a shootout. Okay, great. Oh, but, since we've got all this money and we're a big production, Hollywood, let's have like several henchmen, and we'll have all these blood everywhere. And it's great visuals, but it was just really, when I think about the core story, it was unnecessary to have it there. And I wish they had maintained a more of a grittier theme throughout, rather than having these random bombastic scenes. Finally, I just want to mention the title of the movie, State of Grace. I must say, I do not like this title for a film. Several times I've had to remind myself what this title was. I always think it's State of Game or State of Faith or something, and it's actually State of Grace. So that might be another reason why, not having a very memorable title, this movie has pretty much been forgotten. And as I said, I never hear anyone talk about this movie. I've never seen it advertised. I've never seen a DVD of it in the shops. I've never seen it on TV. So a real forgotten gem. But it's definitely worth checking out, 100%, because everyone here, gives a solid performance in this movie. I think even if they added just the State of Grace, that might have been a bit easier to remember. But State of Grace, it just, state of, what, huh? So I think the title let down the movie a little bit there. So in terms of ratings, I will be rating this a 6 out of 10. Given the fact it's so unknown, it's likely people watching this have not seen it. If you're a fan of Gary Oldman, Sean Penn, Ed Harris, John Turturro, this is a movie you definitely should check out at least once. Robin Wright is really, really good in this. Even just thinking about it, a very young John C. Reilly is in this movie. He's only in it for about 10-15 minutes, but he gives a good performance. So definitely worth checking out if you're a fan of any of these actors involved. It's an entertaining 2 hours and 15 minutes for sure.
Like, subscribe.